when you're in that much pain, you're like, wow, I didn't, you don't know before that how much pain a collapse of something that is like a death, or the collapse of all your money or your relation, whatever it is, or your health. It's different for every person that it happens to, but how much pain and suffering that can trigger. And so it's in those moments that one is like the separate sense of self is kind of like forced to look deeper, as it were. It's forced to it's like forcing it's trying to find its way back home, because it starts to go, wow, something must be wrong with this. Is like, my clients say to me sometimes, it's like, this shouldn't be happening. It's not that we're judging it and saying there's a should or shouldn't about it. It's just, you really see a dysfunction in that moment within you, and you go, what is, there must be something fundamental about how I'm seeing reality that is screwed up, that is causing me to experience this much pain.
You are listening to the Boundless Enigma Podcast with Sam Zins
and Ryan Mulkentine. On this podcast, we dive into the mind, reality, and existence itself to provide you with boundless ideas and insights. Welcome to another episode of the Boundless Enigma Podcast. Today, we have with us Alex Shailer, a YouTube influencer and non-duality coach, is here with us on the podcast. Hey, Alex. How are you? If you could just tell us a little bit about kind of what you're all about and what you do.
Two things, really. One, I point out a truth that is immediately present, that we are peace, love, spaciousness at our core. We don't always feel that way. Sometimes troublesome thoughts and feelings cover up that nature, but that is who we are, and that's our starting point. And that's something that I point out, and something that could be referred to as non-duality. And then on another level, helping people just to improve their sense of well-being, to feel in the body and mind peaceful, less anxious, more energized, more well-being, and really like create the things that we want to have in our lives, like conscious relationships, businesses, etc. So that's really what I help people with. Non-duality informed coaching. I'm not really a non-duality coach, because I'm not coaching people on non-duality, but what my work is informed by non-duality. So I could say it that way. That's why but it is, it's my fault. I kind of invented it anyway. So
okay, my mistake. I see. So you're more like a life coach that, if they want to dive into that side, that spiritual side, you're much more inclined to help with that, versus like a regular life coach who would not dive into the non-dual. You have the specialty that you could.
Sure. Well, it is kind of a semantic thing. Like, the non-dual thing is the umbrella, is primary, but coaching as a term, it's just a term that a lot of things can be incorporated into. I mean, actually, coaching on its own, pure coaching, asking questions and raising awareness and responsibility in other people, is something that's been going for a while, and it has particular roots. Now people call themselves coach, and many people don't actually even know what coaching is. They think it's giving advice. It's not. It's actually helping the other person to understand what they want and how to get it, and help them to get it. So by asking powerful questions. So that's the coaching aspect of it. And to be honest, that's the most powerful aspect of it. So that's why I still really call myself a coach, because I do resonate with that methodology of not telling, but helping us to come to our own conclusions. But it also it really resonates with the non-dual message, really. And actually, I think it does have kind of links to it in its roots, because when we look at non-duality, if I said what I say at the start of this podcast, we are peace, love, all these floaty terms, it's like, okay, I can say that. You could be like, Alex can say that, but what's the reality to that? And so just like coaching, when you're not telling someone, you're asking someone to go to their experience. It's the same with non-duality. It's like, don't just believe it, go to your experience. Is it true that you are these things on a deep level, and they can be an immediate experience for you? Like, investigate that. Is that true for you? Because then it becomes a reality. That's the only way.
So you're talking about what you call like these lofty terms that you use. So where would you suggest that somebody gets started with trying to get into all of this and just understand what you're talking about pretty much?
Yeah, I've got some videos like non-duality explained simply. There's many different forms of this message. I'm not going to claim to be the only one. There's many different forms. I think it's actually good to expose yourself to different messages within the non-duality field and see what really resonates with you. What I aim to do personally is kind of distill lots of things, just kind of distill it down, or really carve out a kind of middle way. So
Oh, I haven't heard that before.
sorry,
The middle way?
a middle way, yes.
That sounds like Buddha.
Sure.
The
Yeah,
middle way.
yeah, I mean, non-duality's expression is duality, isn't it? So you can be like really absolutist about it on one end, or really compromising relativist about it on the other end. But I don't aim to be, I just think that's my natural expression of somewhere in the middle. And but it's all beautiful. So it's all perfect. It's okay. Yeah, but I need to actually answer your question, don't I? What was the original question?
How would you like what would you tell somebody who's looking to get into like meditation
Yeah,
and all this
that's
stuff?
it. That's it. So I was explaining. So yeah, basically one, non-duality, and starting with the basics. You can search, expose yourself to this message, and I have videos on this message. And it's really when certain people will just hear the message, and it will be obvious that it may be some truth, at least maybe some truth to this. There will be this natural curiosity within you to dive deeper. I think people arrive at it in two different ways. Either they've been experiencing a lot of suffering and they want liberation from that suffering, or other people are seeking something. There is a recognition within non-duality that this separate sense of self is always lacking something, that we pre-awakening is completely confusing yourself for just being a separate human limited entity that needs to find whatever it may be in life, meet its needs, create all its desires, get to a better future, become enlightened, become awake, and become liberated. Really, non-duality is not so much about, okay, where you're going to learn a new practice, is or something to do. It's more a message that's pointing out what's already true and what's already immediate. And then it asks you, well, it doesn't even ask you, but that is a result of it. It could be a result of it that you investigate that, to see whether it's true in your experience, or you could say that maybe for you, it could become obvious in exposure to these messages that it is apparently obvious that, yes, what I essentially am hasn't been disturbed, by my experience. It's being exposed to this message and seeing whether those statements are true for you, not by thinking about them, but by investigating in your experience. Has my beingness, has the essential nature of who I am, this awareness, being disturbed? And if that could just be a first step of, okay, I'm starting to recognize the qualities of who I really am and what this message says I am, or what is. And through that, it's just through the exposure to the message, like within certain people, that separate, the heavy identification to the separate sense of self being this person who's seeking in time, can at least start to soften. And in some people, it really drops away. So it's really just a long answer to a question, but start from the beginning. Just start by exposing yourself to the message. Don't worry about it. Practice. Just see whether it's true for you.
So I think a lot of this like heavy theoretical kind of talk can be confusing for a lot of people. And I think our listeners they'll probably want to know on a much more tangible level, like what does non-duality really mean? If you really, you said that you like to distill it down as simply as possible for people.
Great.
So
Yeah.
what if you could like just give a very basic kind of definition to help our listeners understand kind of what non-duality, awakening, enlightenment, what that all kind of is, and if that's different, or just given a quick synopsis of that for us.
Absolutely. What a great question, Ryan. So I would say non-duality, where to get started with it. What non-duality really says is that you are more than just a human person living in a world, subject to all of your challenges. You are not just bound and limited by this experience of your life and all the pain and the suffering and all this thinking that happens and which causes so much suffering. Non-duality is saying that the real you is beyond your life circumstance, in the sense that it is larger than it. And what it says is that just notice that how much of your life is spent listening to the voice in your head, imagining yourself to be that character in your mind and taking that seriously. To start with non-duality, just use your attention to zoom out from that narrative for a moment and see the full view. Just see yourself as this presence of awareness. So just see that there is just simply what's appearing. So non-duality at its core is the most simple thing. They say silence is the highest teaching because it really is just this.
Right. So it's basically it's all right in front of us. It's just a matter of recognizing that it is just right here. It is us.
Exactly. And that's an experiential thing. So you don't do it with the mind. You're not like thinking, okay, this is a new thing to think about. Instead, notice that when you move your attention around, when you look at one thing and you look at something else in the room, when you start to move your attention to what you're hearing, and then you move your attention to what you're feeling in your body, you're not thinking about that. You're not doing that as a person who's trying to think about something and figure it out. That's where we live most of the time. We mistake ourselves to be in there, that person in there who's doing the thinking. But really, if you investigate it, see, it's just in the way that you can move your attention around that the real you is actually the one that is further back, is actually the awareness as which everything appears. So you don't have to do anything to see that. Just see that there is just this presence of awareness, and just rest your awareness with that awareness. Just rest your attention with the fact that you just simply are, and there just is what is. And notice that all the thoughts that you're experiencing and all of the sense of just your whole life and who you are as a person and all the suffering that comes with that, all the ups and downs, just notice what that's made out of. It's made out of memories and thoughts and imagination, which all
Yeah.
just appear now. Just
Right.
investigate with your attention what's prior to that.
And is there really anything there if you keep trying to find something, if you keep trying to go back behind and behind and behind? Is there something really there? Do you think? Is there an arrival point?
Well, there just simply is something, nothing and everything at once. If we talk about awareness or true self or no self or just what is, which are a few different terms you might hear in the non-duality scene to point to this, which means bringing, just pointing this out, as it were. It is the nature of it is non-dual. The nature of reality and of yourself, what non-duality is saying is that it's non-dual, it's not two. So what that means is that it's not anything that is a dualistic concept. So that's not that it's nothing, because nothing only exists with something, you see? It can't be nothing and it can't be something. It is both of them and neither at once. So in a way, it's kind of everything, but it's not everything in contrast to nothing.
Yeah.
But it is also nothing in the sense of it's completely open. If you investigate the nature of yourself, which means just seeing yourself as this open awareness, you see that everything that appears and disappears in it appears and leaves with no trace.
Yeah.
And that this awareness that you are is kind of like an empty space. But at the same time, it's completely full of a vivid appearance.
Yeah. It's like it's nothing, but yet allows for everything at the same time.
Yes.
Wow. That is such a hard concept to grasp. And I saw one of your videos.
Grasp it. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's because you can't grasp it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How could you get outside everything to grasp everything?
It's I think a better way to say it, a better thing to say would be it's hard to get yourself to experience it.
Right.
Okay. See, in the language, to get yourself. So investigate who's the one who's going to get it. Because that is the illusion.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot.
Well then how do you be then?
Well,
how to be.
You already are. It's just that you've mistaken yourself to be doing something. You mistake yourself to just be the doing, as it were, the one who's seeking. Now, a lot of people get confused and this is where it's like with the practices and meditation, that's almost like the message of, no, you've got to get rid of the doing so that you can just simply be. I've got to slow down my mind. And then people they have this experience of like, wow, I'm just being and I'm completely satisfied and there's nothing wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
But to notice that you are the being, which is purely immediate and timeless and always present, you don't have to get rid of the doing. That can happen. So even if you say, what do I do? Or how do I get to it? Or what practice? That is all still it as well. So it's transcendent of any obstacle. That's when you're communicating this message and you're kind of applying like coaching methodology in a way. It's kind of like you're being presented a proposition and then you're showing how like you're raising awareness within someone else as to whether that's true or as to whether that's true or not.
Yeah. So this seems to be a very profound thing in your life because you've dedicated your life now to helping other people experience more non-duality and get to that place. So where did this begin with you? Do you remember a specific point in your life, in this human life that we're talking about, you, Alex Shailer?
Hmm.
Is there a point when you first had an experience that just blew your mind, and or something that's where you had your first experience of non-duality?
I could pick a pivotal moment. There has been stages, and there were things before and things after. But if I was forced to pick one, it would be pretty soon after the end of my 10-year relation. It was almost 10 years. I think it was about 2 months off 10 years. And so it was a long one. And so the collapse of that, which was kind of expected and kind of not at the same time, really was very internally disturbing. And it was, I'm not sure if, I think this was in your question, something about a why, but it really, it was at that point that I probably developed, or there was this compassion that came, because when you're in that much pain, you're like, wow, you don't know before that how much pain a collapse of something that is like a death, or the collapse of all your money or your relation, whatever it is, or your health. It's different for every person that it happens to, but how much pain and suffering that can trigger. And so it's in those moments that one is like, the separate sense of self is kind of like forced to look deeper, as it were. It's like forcing it's trying to find its way back home, because it starts to go, wow, something must be wrong with this. Is like, my clients say to me sometimes, it's like, this shouldn't be happening. It's not that we're judging it, saying there's a should or shouldn't about it. It's just, you really see a dysfunction in that moment within you, and you go, there must be something fundamental about how I'm seeing reality that is screwed up, that is causing me to experience this much pain, when fundamentally, like, I'm safe. Like, I'm not going to starve. I'm probably going to be able to put food in my mouth and have a roof over my head. And yet someone leaving you, the amount of thoughts and the level of pain. So then I started listening to Eckhart Tolle, and he's quite mainstream now, really. Maybe many more listeners would have heard of him rather than the phrase non-duality, and maybe even know, like, phrase be present or something like that. And his message isn't like, it's quite compromising, in the sense that it's not that direct, but that's probably quite good in a way, because it made it more accessible, maybe made it a bit accessible. And it's just good to have a few different expressions of this. And then after that, I kind of started to go deeper over the years, as it really became the foundation for all my healing. It's like I still had to do all of these things to feel better after that, and all my other challenges that I've experienced. But all that doing always came, all the best doing always came from first recognizing the immediate peace and wholeness of being. And I sort of had this recognition that it's that way around. It's like, it's from the inside out. There's this recognition of like, I'm not that, those thoughts that are like me and my life, and this is what's happened to me, and my will I have money, and like, I can't believe this happened, and what did I do wrong, and what did she do wrong, and what could have I done better, and it just goes on and on and on forever in your head, and people can't escape from this stuff. They're literally listening to it. It's a podcast on loop that they can't switch off, and they don't know how to take attention away. And at the same time, they're feeling physical, just in the same way as you, like, if you got punched in the stomach, pain in their body that's really, really intense. So no wonder so many people get suicidal. But if you see in those, when you're exposed to this message, you get to see in those moments that the real, who you really are, is not limited. It's beyond that. So it doesn't automatically get rid of all of the pain and instantly heal you, but it does make you go, wow, there is the presence of this, but I'm fundamentally okay and safe at the foundation of it all. And so that was really what was immediately obvious in that moment, probably listening to the power of now, like for the 10th time in a row. I just put it on Audible, on repeat.
I have it right here.
There you go. But you can there is this sort of simplicity of it that which emerges over time with different speakers. But I think it's all perfect, the different expressions.
So would you say that piece that you gained from just recognizing all the things you did, would you say that inner peace is like the biggest reward that you gained from, I can't even say a reward that you gained, but the biggest recognition that you've gotten through doing what you've done?
I wouldn't say so in terms of getting, because if you look at peace on the relative level, is like, you could say, this general feeling of day-to-day well-being, and but stress, as it were, that is it's a normal thing in life. It's normal to feel uncomfortable sometimes, and I still feel uncomfortable, or I feel like emotions, or feel feelings or whatever. The kind of peace we're talking about is beyond state. It's not something that you get, or it can be, and I know you change your phrasing, like, or get a reward, because it's not something that you can have. It's already the nature of who you are. So that's really important, just to emphasize that, because we just have to be careful of when we describe this, of like, whenever we start to objectify it, because really this is the whole point of the message, if there was any point, is that it is beyond needing to be objectified or got or achieved or anything like that. Enlightenment, awakening, which you could just say exactly the same thing, is simply the recognition of what's already immediate, rather than being something you achieve and light bulbs go off in your head.
Right. It's not like this race to, get an A on a math test or anything like that. It's more so just, experience and just recognizing what's already here.
Exactly. And then you're more likely to get, counterintuitively, you're more likely to get A on the maths test. Right. Because who's more likely to get A on the maths test? Someone that knows themselves as conscious awareness and not just this mental story in the mind and their emotions, or someone that's looking at their mental story and emotions completely caught up in that? Like, who's going to perform the best on the test? So it's a counterintuitive thing, because the sense of self usually is trying to do really good on the test, because it thinks it's going to achieve something through the test. And then, but the irony is that the harder it tries, the more it creates resistance and the worse it does. So it's a kind of counterintuitive message that this awareness that you are is a wellspring of natural intelligence, because it's able to flow with what is. It is the flow, as it were. There's going to be presence of challenges and thinking, but it's not like heavy and personalized.
That can be really frustrating, I feel like, for a lot of people, because it's so easy to have the object to go after. That's like, I mean, even if you remind me, like, it's not an object, it's like, then I'll still be like, okay, it's not an object, and that's the object. Like, it's so infuriating.
Well, the thing is, the realization, I should say, not even realization, maybe revelation or discovery, it is always completely immediate. It's outside of time. It's completely immediate. But the way the sort of the mind reflects that, as it were, takes time. And part of that unfolding is the mind going, oh, well, that's it. Oh, yeah, now I'm objectifying it. And now, like, oh, I can see where this, and then you get triggered by something in life, and you see where you were still sort of, there was this identification with this character and this thing, and then you let that go. And over time, there's this sort of personal neuroticisms tend to unwind for me, and this is why maybe I have this middle way thing going on. I had to do a lot of healing as well, it's all secondary to just being, but there is like lots of things that you can kind of do, so it's not exclusive of all of that. It's like you can do a lot to also feel calmer in the body and the mind and all of that, so that it is like it's even inclusive of those outcomes. It's not like you have to go, oh, don't objectify, don't try and have any outcomes even with this. It's just that what are those outcomes on behalf of? Are they on behalf of one who's trying to seek a wholeness or a peace in the outcome, which is already you? Or is it on behalf of knowing that you already are that, because you've seen that, and then you go and do that? I go, great, go and get that outcome, go and feel good, go and build an awesome life or an awesome creation, but just know that it all of it is the presence of awareness of you, of what is, and that it is an appearance of timeless, dimensionless everything. And as long as you just sort of stay in that, then the goal's not the outcome's not a problem. Even if it's like, oh, I want to like really awaken, there's a kind of awakening on the level of form. What is that? It is a kind of progressive embodiment of like peace and love, like on the human level. But the heart of the non-dual message, or the starting place, is beyond that, because the human level is just one appearance of many. Consciousness is infinite consciousness, and therefore it can appear as anything.
That's crazy. Huh. I guess that's crazy. I want to ask, where are you located?
Mexico at the moment.
Mexico. So I noticed in some of your YouTube videos, you have like palm trees and stuff in the background. Looks very nice. What are you originally from? Somewhere in the UK?
Yeah.
Your accent?
Yeah.
How is it living in Mexico? Why? How did that happen?
It was really just on intuition, because the business is mobile. I designed it that way. I didn't used to have a mobile job. I was an electrician for 15 years. So at some point I had to take advantage of that and be mobile. So that's just how that happened. I mean, maybe if you're British, because you've dealt with such terrible weather, well, they say I mean, obviously it's all perfect, we're saying on the human level, such gray, like not seeing the sun for we see so little sun in the UK. There was probably something inside British boy Alex that just wanted to be. But I mean, in all of that, it's been an incredible journey. Mexico, I've been here for, what was it, about 8 months now, and it feels like I've lived lifetimes, because it's just such a different world, and you just learn so much from that cultural shift. And it's really strange in a way as well, because especially for me, when I look at a lot of non-duality stuff online, is so sort of devoid of story. We're sort of talking about transcendence of stories, and yet I found personally within that, this is like really paradoxical, in the sense that it's like once you recognize like the meaninglessness and the storylessness of everything, it's like there's so much meaning and story. For example, it's about 10 places that I've seen in Mexico that I am sure from my own experience I had premonitions of 10, 15 years ago. And that had never happened to me before. And I'm quite skeptical. I'm not the kind of person to say, oh yeah, I just dream things and I'm psychic. I didn't expect it. For me, myself, I was very, very surprised. And I very much thought about it and tested it. And I'm like, no, there was something going on there, that there was, so something about Mexico is special in terms of this consciousness, as it were. People talk about the cenotes in the jungle, but also if you look at AI and where we're going, bootstrapping that onto capitalism and launching it isn't going to work, is it? So perhaps Mexico is part of the conversation on, like, what are we going to do with our future technologies, and keep them kind of grounded and connected to nature, because that's what's so nice about where I am, is that it is like a city, it is like a town, it is a bit sort of, there's your tourist traps here, but there is also this just beautiful, I mean, I've lived in the jungle here and seen tropical, you have to stop phone conversations because you're just so fascinated with the bird you're probably never going to see again in your whole life. So you're living that here, and it's
Alex, I'm gonna have to cut you off here. I think we're gonna have to redo the Zoom here. We're running out of time.
Okay, we're on that time.
I got some more questions to ask you, so we gotta re-go.
All right, so we just left off talking about how Alex moved to Mexico. So what are some things that you've learned since moving to Mexico? Like that's got to be a big impact in your life.
Things that I've learned. Wow. I wouldn't know where to start with that. So much. Just trying to think of some highlights, maybe what's been a theme. Just really like learning a lot about thinking, which is so seemingly counter to the non-dual message, because we talk about like not thinking, and meditation is seemingly about not thinking, but actually seeing progressively more clearly how thinking works, how these like it's a bit like, maybe a relatable example is like, everybody's been using ChatGPT and seeing this like large language model produce human-like text, and it's things like this that show you that we kind of have like a large language model in our head, and how that's operating and how that's prompted and what's informing what that's doing. That's become very obvious since being in Mexico, due to many different things. So and really a lot about it's always been present for me. I feel like I've been for a while connected to what's very important, or what's really important on the human level. What is really embodying like peace and love. That's a lifelong lesson, and I can't claim to be a perfect guru on that, but learning a lot about, and I think learning a lot about how to embody these concepts is a lot about seeing more and more clearly how you can create a life that is in line with that. What would that look like? Is it possible for us to be living in a world where we have some stress, we have some challenges, but we are relatively, free to creatively express and be healthy? Can we have better quality problems in life? That's what I've been learning a lot about.
Did you struggle to create a life to build your business essentially around consciousness and non-duality? Like, I feel like that's a tricky business to get into. Was that hard? How did you do it?
It's hard in the sense that to create something like that, there is a lot of cost involved as well. There is a cost to everything in the sense that there is going to be challenges to everything. And that's what creates the whole game. If everything was, if there was no barrier to entry, everybody would be doing everything. So I've experienced a lot of having to like renegotiate. There's a renegotiation of how you're thinking and feeling, like a whole, on the personal level, a whole personal transformation had to happen. And that is still going on. It will probably always continue. And it's quite like a tight feedback loop choosing this kind of business, because you're essentially sort of saying, okay, I'm going to do nature of reality consciousness stuff. And so you got to be pretty direct. You got to be able to, this has got to be something that people actually experience, because otherwise it won't last. It's just words. So I could see it was hard in the sense I've experienced loads of challenges, but at the same time there was the presence of that you know this truth, or there is this. It's not that the person can ever really know reality, but there is this sense there is this expression within the person of like, that this is like this is and this is a thing. And people, everybody that I've worked with, they seem to have that sense within them as well. So it's easy in the sense of, well, this is obviously true. Maybe many people don't get there so fast because we're busy in distractions. We're busy trying to find something in life. But at some point, like, there's some suffering or a really transformative life experience. And it points you to messages like this. I mean, The Power of Now has sold millions. It's not like it's super niche. People are looking for transcendence from this pain of being an apparently separate individual. So it's like, it seems kind of highbrow and lofty on one side, and it can kind of, there is, because it's right down to the core of reality. So it kind of sounds, we don't usually, whenever we talk about like reality and consciousness, is usually in the frame of science or philosophy or something like really high level. But really here, it's actually really simple. And I'm constantly like just refining my expression to be to just to point out the simplicity. And so yeah, it is easy in the sense that people, you can go out there and talk about this stuff, and certain people respond to that, and certain people will want to pay you for personal time, and at the same time you can be on YouTube and just put free content out there and deliver that free time. But at the same time, like, be able to pay your expenses, be able to put food on the table. If you're doing a 40-hour-a-week job, like as an electrician, it can't focus on like really communicating or providing or a space for people in an efficient way. So yeah, if that answers the question or gives you some deeper insight.
Yeah, absolutely. And backtracking just a little bit to what you were talking about, it being so simple. I feel like it's so simple that we tend to get tripped up in our own thoughts on what it actually is about. What do you think is the most like what do you think the best way is to go about that? Because I find myself doing that a lot, where it's like, I'll be meditating and then you get tripped up, and then you like start thinking about meditating, and it's like this whole rabbit hole that you fall down.
Yeah, just don't ever, just know that is never an obstacle. This message hasn't got it's transcendent of all those attempts.
Okay.
And that can still happen. That can still, if you seek forever or try to meditate to get somewhere forever, in your experience now, does that block you from just noticing that you are aware?
So like maybe when you have a block when you're meditating, instead of like trying to not have the block, you could like let yourself experience the struggle and like not kind of fight it in a way. Because I think what you're saying is a little bit confusing in the sense you're saying like, oh, it's not he's having a struggle, but he shouldn't have a struggle because he should just be. But it's like if he's having the struggle regardless of whether he should or not, it's like the struggle is still there. So with the struggle being present, what do you just accept it, and then through the acceptance, do you get somewhere, or what?
Yeah. So, well, yeah, like, do you just accept it? Yes, in the sense that you notice that you are the acceptance, and then within that, the struggle will fall away. Although you're not attached to whether it does or not. There's no, this isn't attached to whether or not that does. If you're trying not to struggle, that's still more struggling, you see?
Right.
It's like when you meditate and you experience those thoughts of your thoughts just like doing their thing. What I'm really saying, maybe to clear up the confusion, is that it's that this, what I'm communicating, what's being communicated here, it doesn't matter whether you're struggling or not. If there is a struggle, the recognition that you are just the acceptance, you are this space in which that struggle appears, and you're not invested or identified in whether or not that resolves itself. Counterintuitively, it probably will resolve itself. It's like when you take your attention off of something, it tends to sort of, you're not feeding it with energy anymore, are you? But any attempt to take your attention off of it from that level. So really, perhaps what simplifies this even more is that just notice what level that is coming from, what level the struggle is coming from. So it's like, instead of being like, oh, what do I do to stop struggling? Just notice that if you're thinking about it at all, and you're thinking that that's going to get you anywhere, that's the illusion itself. And then with that, the attempt to do it through thinking may fall away. And what's left when thinking falls away? Just this.
Yeah, so like basically stop worrying about doing it correctly or whatever you're trying to get to through meditation or whatnot, and rather just get to that. Basically, yeah, I see what you're saying. It's like just there's nothing to do, like, except just be right there in that moment.
Yes, and it's like, yes, exactly. And if doing appropriates it in any way, it's like the only real doing is just like test the theory. If I say to you, like, this is reality, then you won't have to do anything for that to become obvious to you, will you? Like, if, especially if the reality is like being, being is the peace and the fulfillment that you're looking for. If I say that, like, there's nothing that you can do to see whether that's true, because what it's saying is like the lack of the doing is that, you see what I mean?
Right.
So it's more just like, and this is what just naturally happens when you're exposed to this message. is that there's not one that has to go and really investigate it or test the theory as such. Although that's still said, really that just becomes kind of more and more obvious as you watch this, or yourself, or however you want to express it. Not yourself, the mind activity self, but as you watch yourself, as in just the awareness, as you just watch that and just see what it's like just to be that knowingly, not intellectually, but just like you're resting as awareness, some people express it as, or just there is just what is appearing, other people express it as. And as you just rest in that, then the other things that are said about it, as in like it is peace, it is joy, it is a wellspring of energy, it is where your neuroticism start to unfold and your healing springs from, that will become more and more like obvious in time, because it's like you're just living. It's not a model of reality. What you could say is a kind of like on one level, there's a different model of reality, because it's what it's saying is that everything is just what's appearing, or the expression of the one consciousness. So as it's not like there's a separate individual to live that, but it is just life appearing, and then it's sort of paradoxically, there's sort of more revelation of inner calmness, or because it's or an increased ability to create more energy, things like that. Like enlightenment, really there is benefit, but it's not a benefit that you get, it's a benefit as resting knowingly as your true nature. But it like takes you, it's like the falling away of the person that's trying to do something to get all of those things. Things still happen to create them, but really they just kind of unfold as you just as the efforting gradually kind of falls away and is seen to be more and more like the illusion, as it were. You don't have to get rid of it, but there's that sense of self tries to do stuff, and it always gets itself into a pickle. It always like ends up in the pleasure pain cycle. So there's more and more recognition that like, okay, yeah, there is this like reality that's beyond that appears as and is independent of and unlimited by that.
Right.
If I say that to you, you don't have to do anything, do you? It will just become more obvious as you're like
Right.
just being that.
I've definitely noticed just by having this conversation, I've found myself being like more present and conscious just simply by having this conversation and looking at the screen and this microphone in front of me. It's like I can get little tastes of what you're saying just right here, right now, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd actually like to switch gears though for the last few minutes.
Sure.
I know that your YouTube channel, some of the most popular videos are about nofap or about semen retention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I've been super interested in. And it's something that I would love for you to share. If like, what are the benefits of that for this type of work of uh resting in awareness? Does semen retention help increase your awareness in a sense?
No, it awareness can't be increased because it is already everything and nothing and who you are. I mean, semen retention can temporarily increase energy, human energy, maybe like clarity of mind. It can be a kind of a discipline challenge for the person, and things can be learned from that. A lot of things can be learned from how we view our sexuality and how we interact with that. you know, it's about like just exploring what works for you and what your values are, you know. And it's like, so it's separate from the non-dual message on the level is that it can't get you there. It's not an aid to get there. But in terms of doing this, it's, in a way, it's hard to completely jump from one level to another. So we can kind of see it, we can kind of transition by looking at it through the lens of non-duality. If you are not living as a, like as a separate individual in your head, there may be more expression of addictive sort of behaviors with sexuality and stuff, because there's a lot of revolving pain and anxiety that goes along with that experience. So that the expression of that separate person may end up sort of expressing a lot of sexual energy in very high amounts, in very like unconscious ways, or ways to medicate pain, or just in ways that don't really align with what they really want because they're too fearful to ask for what they really want. If you're trying to do semen retention as like a person who's going to like get, I mean, that's how it started off for me. And there was, I mean, it was fun. It was really fun. I used to do like really long streaks all the time, and you'd build up all this energy, and it would be this crazy like experience. And you'd be like, wow, you've got so much energy just coming from one place. I thought I had to do like 15 hours of stretching and exercise and have the most perfect diet, but I found there's a little bit of flexibility in there, and there's so it is so, it's almost like there's an atom bomb down there that we didn't realize was there, because you're just in this like this perpetual, as soon as you feel that energy, as soon as you feel horny, you can express it now.
Yeah.
But like, what is your semen retention really? All it does is it says like, what happens when you're not like, you're not desperately seeking in time to medicate.
So
You're more just going to be with what you're experiencing and that pain, and then just feel the energy that goes with it without having to do anything.
so meditating while on like a 14-day streak of no fap versus meditating a day after, I feel like is there no difference in that? Like I feel like that energy would almost like help me in a way, like it would hone, because you know, like I mean, you know what brain fog is? It's just like the ability, it's just the not the inability of our minds to like see clearly, I guess, you know. And I feel like no fap, I think it's also called brahmacharya in like the Hindu
Yes.
tradition.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the opposite of brain fog. It like
Yeah.
sharpens. Like so I think I feel like it could help. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Right. I get what, okay. I think maybe this is, I've said this for the first time. So as it comes out, I'm thinking like whether this is, but it seems to be, maybe this is where this has kind of come from. Really, I would express that semen retention is, it can be great for the person, for the world of form, as in like, okay, you know, creating things, having energy, being able to think clearly, yes, not unconsciously spending loads of your sexual energy all the time is definitely going to help with that. Definitely going to help with that. And but when it comes to non-duality, it is completely unconditional. That's what's unique about the message. It's completely unconditional, because in your experience is yourself awareness, the fact that you are not completely unconditional. So what can help with that? You know, there's nothing that can help with that. You can help like to not feel as stressed in the body, to have clearer thinking, to and then what you may be able to do with that, like create something, have a certain experience of a certain feeling. That's great. That's cool. That's awesome. I love that. I love creation. Just know that it is of that level. It is of the level of form. So it is in its nature, it's transitory. It appears and disappears with no trace in your experience, and awareness is primary. So have fun with semen retention, being able to dive. It is, I mean, great. Like if you just really cultivate some sexual energy, not be a dogmatic extremist about it, but just notice that that's a thing and be, relatively conscious about be conscious about your expression, and don't just be spending all that energy all the time unconsciously. Like you're going to be able to think a lot clearer, and maybe that will have profound impacts on the human level, in the sense of like the difference between feeling like less stressed and foggy headed and clearer and more energized. Well, that can like take you to a very different reality. But just know that who you really are is infinite and can have an expression of infinite realities. So it's just one of many dreams, but you can have fun with concepts like semen retention in this dream. I remember when I first like heard about NoFap and I tried it out, and I was like, I remember saying to myself, like, this is the most, I've done everything. I've done Wim Hof method, yoga, like I've swam in the sea in Iceland. I've tried to have the best diet and everything, but this like retaining your seed, it was really profound in the level of like energy and like new confidence. And so that's probably why I've talked about it and why people are so interested in it. So it's just as relevant. It's just not, and it is completely relevant in terms of non-duality. It's just not relevant to discovering your true nature.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So a quick question to follow that up. So would you consider NoFap to be something, obviously different realms of things, but would you consider it to be similar to like lifting weights? It's like, it's just improving your physical, like human health, but not necessarily anything beyond that?
Well, it's like a practice in energy direction, as it were. It's like, which circuits are you running?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a test for the on the human level of like, can you experience this pain of craving and not act on it, and just experience. So it relates to non-duality in that way, because if you're resting as your true nature of awareness, it's more likely that there's going to be this expression on the person level where the person realizes that this isn't going to bring lasting peace, permanent fulfillment. So maybe it does less of the more compulsive expressions of that. And within that, the kind of like energy builds up. And then, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That definitely makes a lot of sense. All right. Yeah.
It's always been a fascination with me for sure. Like, because I've also experienced like oh wow, like I never knew that I had this power inside me, but it is crazy.
Yeah, as well. I mean, it's like we have these concepts that help to balance things out. It's like with anything, with any source of dopamine, so with any source of like pleasure on the pleasure pain cycle, we're having more and more ability through like this appearance of time to augment reality in a way that just hits that button, and people like us were born in still relatively young, I think, but I like you was born in I mean, it's going to be more, even more intense for you, assuming that you're younger, but the we're sort of born into this era of it being so malleable. Like you can just bring up when in human history have you been able to instantly bring up an image of anything that you want to see ever?
Yeah.
And now even more so, you can literally imagine anything, and it's just like, and so it's like we have this question to ask, and it becomes more and more relevant the younger you are. Like, where is that energy going? Like, what am I? Currency. If dopamine is kind of like a currency or like a breadcrumb trail of like where your motivation's going. You may be very motivated to, have sex or use pornography or whatever, but it's like, it's not saying there's anything right or wrong with that. It's just very interesting to look at like the difference sometimes between how you actually really want to live your life and what you actually end up doing purely because there is this increasing ability in the world just to create a dopamine hit that you can go for. And this kind of like stepping back from that and going like, what are we actually creating here? And how do we want to express ourselves, still have pleasure, but what do we actually want? Do we want to be alone in our room, like with just never ending digital novelty? I mean, maybe if it's ethical. I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong with it, but some people may not choose to do that, and they don't think they want that, and yet they feel so tied to it in the way that they do like Facebook or Instagram, because in the same way like porn like and Facebook and Instagram, that it's like casino psychology. It's little kind of hits that just keep you going, little bits of novelty that just keep you going. So semen retention is like that one. It's like the ultimate. It's almost like people see it as the ultimate version of that test, as it were, because what is more primal to a human than its ability to reproduce?
Right. Yeah, and like all these little hits that we get are just constantly tangling our wires, so to speak. And yeah, we kind of don't realize where that energy is going and what we're even doing really. And then, and then we put ourselves in positions by just frying our brains with all this stuff and that we don't want to be in, pretty much.
Yeah. And there's a kind of awakening that happens on the human level there, as it were, that we realize that there's just these things, there's just these tracks that we're running along that are becoming increasingly harder to get out of. And it's like we're really being asked in a way, like reality is evolving in a way that we're really being asked to, or being forced, this is not quite the right words, but you get what I mean, compelled maybe is the right word, to become very clear about what we want and what our intentions are. Because if you look at neuroscience, even on a level of neuroscience, it's like that prefrontal cortex activity coming in with like a decision to do something, clarity about why, like connection to one's deeper self or whatever. It's like those are the things that that's what has someone overcome addiction. It's like what we call being conscious or whatever, being aware. So there's kind of like a bit of crossover confusion there, as it was like you'd be more aware. There is a kind of more aware on the human level, as in like clearer in your thinking and in your sort of your present, this connection to this presence and this awareness about what you do and don't want to do. So this, on that level, it's kind of compelling us to do that. And so many people are asking questions like about this, and this is a very common thing with people that come to me. It's like, I'm doing this thing, like I'm using this, or I'm doing this, or I'm engaging with Tinder or relationships or pornography or social media. it's those are like massive ones now. It used to be like drugs, and it's obviously like drugs still there, but it's like these are the new drugs for so many people.
Yeah, and then they're right in front of us at all times. That's the scary part.
But they will be, but this is the thing. If we get what we want on a human level, it will be that at any moment immediately you'll be able to do what, like, get whatever you want. You see what I mean? That's what we're trying to do, isn't it? Like this refinement and progressive, more and more like quality of life and freedom to express and to, but within that you get two sides, because within freedom to express, you can just express like a manifestation of just like pleasure, pain, and just and all of that. Or you can become more intentional about, there was this intentionality that comes into your creation when you're living as enlightened intent, which is awakened intent is like, it's like the natural, it's like when you're in flow, the natural inspirations and intuitions that just arise when you're just simply just being, is that is usually like what's in line with that flow.
Yeah.
And serum retention can kind of power that, as it were. If you're building up like energy, then it's like it. If you can, there's no one to do it, as it were, but in a certain way of saying it, if you can just be with that energy, then there tends to be this like, that's when you start getting the big downloads come in. It's like, wow, like, oh, I could do this amazing project. I could just, like, you're really clear about what you want to create and what you want to dream. Maybe you don't want to dream being in a darkened room with hours of Pornhub. Maybe you want to dream something better than that. It's not, awareness is preferenceless, but on the human level you get to dream different things, but on the human level you have to be clear about what you want, otherwise you're just going to create your own nightmare. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's compelling us to this intentionality, otherwise we just get controlled by the appearance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, with all that being said, Alex, thank you for being on our podcast. This was great, and we'd love to have you back sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to come back sometimes. I thought the questions were great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Would you like to plug your YouTube or Instagram or anything?
Sure, you can just search my name, Alex Shailer. And if you're interested in inquiring about one-to-ones, then go to speaktoalex.com. Speaktoalex.com. There's a little form to fill in and you can book. We'll see if we can get a 10-minute call just to talk about your problems and then see if there's an opportunity to work together. And that's really it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Alex.
Thanks, man. It's been awesome. I definitely learned a lot just from the little conversation we've had today.
Great.
So, all right.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.